Ms. Teresa Cofield, Director of the UCR School of Medicine's Pathway Program and a founding staff member of the School of Medicine. Dr. Thomas Haider, Emeritus member of the UCR Board of Trustees, the School of Medicine Advisory Board, and the individual for whom the UCR-UCLA Thomas Haider Program in Biomedical Sciences was renamed in 1997. Dr. Neil Schiller, Professor Emeritus and former Senior Associate Dean of Student Affairs at UCR School of Medicine. I also want to mention Dr. Michael Dwadi again, because Dr. Dwadi is a graduate of the UCR-UCLA Thomas Haider program, and he is now Chief Academic Officer for United Health System's Acute Care Division and a faculty member of UCR School of Medicine. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 9th Chancellor of UCR, Dr. Kim Wilcox.
Thank you, Dean Dees. Great to have all of you here in this great building. So we're really proud of our School of Medicine, and we're proud of the place that it lives now. We're here to do lots of things, but for me, mostly thank the Vine Society for their advocacy. Without that, we could well imagine we wouldn't even have a medical school. Advocate comes from the Latin advocatus, those who come to the aid of another. Come to the aid of another. And when UCR needed a medical school, the Vine Society were advocates. They came to our aid to help make the case to the state, to the university, that we needed a medical school here, that the region needed a medical school, the university needed a medical school. That's advocacy. But it's not surprising when you think of the members. I know many of you members. I know that you advocate not just for universities, for schools of medicine, but you advocate every day for your patients, for their health, for their well-being, for the well-being of the society itself. So today, my hat's off to all of you who do that kind of advocacy, that is aiding another every day in your professional and private lives, but also certainly collectively for what you have accomplished here at UCR. Now, there's another advocate who has been important to us over the years, and that's Michael Drake, who is the president of the University of California. Michael was actually a vice president for health affairs with the UC in the early days of conceptualizing a medical school here, became the chancellor at UC Riverside, or UC Irvine, just down the road, and was actually an advisor to me in my first few years on the job when we were chancellors together. He's now the president of the university. He couldn't be here today, but he did send along a message that I'd like to read to you if I could. For many years, the J.W. Vines Medical Society has supported physicians and other caregivers in their quest to provide high-quality patient services to people throughout the Inland Empire, including but not limited to thousands who are marginalized or otherwise underserved. Decades ago, the Vine Society helped catalyze the transformation of the medical education program at UC Riverside into what is now a patient-focused, state-of-the-art medical school. We're so proud of the outstanding, diverse medical graduates that the school is producing. This new wave of extraordinary medical professionals is providing the broadly accessible, high-quality care we all deserve. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today to celebrate these accomplishments and to thank all of you who have been so pivotal in making all this happen. I want to particularly thank my longtime colleague and friend, Ernest Levister, for his passion and focus and for the impact his prescient vision has had on the University of California and the broader community. That impact is particularly notable for the hundreds of thousands of patients in the region who are and will be better served because of his resolve. He was relentless. You could say his middle initials are TTP. Ernie, Truth to Power Levister. He and the Vine Society pushed the university to embrace a more inclusive vision of what the emerging medical school could be. The result is meaningful and truly special. Thank you, and fiat lux. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Wilcox. At this time, I'd like to direct your attention to a brief video summarizing the importance of the J.W. Vines Medical Society and the work that they do today.
Since the 1980s, the J.W. Vines Medical Society has been working to overcome the health issues and challenges facing the African American community in inland Southern California. The Vine Society provides support for practicing African American physicians, including resources that help them succeed and thrive in today's medical environment. Their Alma Vines Summer Health Academy pairs pre-medical students with physicians in a 6-week shadowing program to prepare them for medical school. In addition, they host financial aid programs, mentoring, and MCAT course preparation programs and grants. Beyond that, the members of the Vine Society played a pivotal role in what would eventually become the UC Riverside School of Medicine. Thanks to their lobbying efforts with the University of California and the California Legislature to reform the Thomas Haider UCR-UCLA Biomedical Sciences program, a new mission with a focus on educating physicians who would stay and work in our underserved regions was created. This would eventually become the underlying mission that guides the UCR School of Medicine. Their effort was an example of a group working together to effect a positive change for our community. And it is not hyperbole to say that the UC Riverside School of Medicine would not exist today without their efforts. Today, the UC Riverside School of Medicine honors and thanks the J.W. Vines Medical Society.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Denise Martinez, who is the Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for UCR School of Medicine. She will be moderating the panels.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Excellent. So thank you, Dean Dees. It's an absolute honor today to moderate this panel and to tell this extremely important story of our medical school and our gratitude towards the J.W. Vine Society. And so first of all, we're going to go ahead and tell a little bit of history and start with Dr. Byus. So let's go ahead and can you hear? Perfect. Thank you. So to start, I'd like to ask Dr. Byus to please tell us about the early history of the UCR-UCLA program and why was it started and what was its goals?
I'm going to need to use my notes here. I'll just stick with it. That's okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Chancellor Wilcox and Dean Dees for inviting me here today for this long overdue acknowledgement of the efforts of the Vine Society in truly transforming the way this university looked at medical education and really promoted and pushed the idea of this medical school and its mission in particular. So let me begin by the original program, the Biomedical Sciences program, was approved in July of 1974 by Governor Jerry Brown. It was a 7-year accelerated undergraduate MD program administered jointly by UCR and the UCLA School of Medicine. And it was actually the idea of Ivan Himmelrucker, who was the chancellor here, and Chuck Young, who was the chancellor at UCLA. And upwards of 200 students would be admitted as freshmen to the Biomedical Sciences program. And following a 3-year accelerated science-heavy curriculum, 16 units per quarter, 24 students would ultimately, of this 200, be admitted into the medical phase administered by the UCLA School of Medicine. These 24 students would then complete years 1 and 2 of a traditional basic science curriculum here at UCR, taught by 14 new faculty, 14 FTEs to support the teaching of the first 2 years of medical school here in Riverside. And upon completion of those 2 years, these 24 students would then matriculate into the normal years 3 and 4, classical clinical years at UCLA School of Medicine in Westwood. So essentially, instead of 4 years of undergraduate and 4 years of medical school, the students did 3 years of undergraduate and 4 years of medical school. At the time, there was a fashion of having 3-year medical schools. In fact, the federal government actually funded this program to cut down on the amount of time it took to graduate. But the 3-year medical schools never did work out very well because you really needed more than 3 years of medical education. So part of this idea was to eliminate 1 year from the undergraduate program. Now, we have this infamous pyramid structure, which you're going to hear a lot about in a moment. In order that there not be 200 students left at the end of 3 years competing for 24 slots in the medical phase, we evaluated them yearly and tried to cut the numbers down so that there was only 50 to 60 left at the end of year 3. So the mission of the original biomedical sciences program was really to bring, and I'm paraphrasing this because there was really no mission stated for this, as many high quality students as evidenced by high school grades and SAT scores to UCR as possible in order to offset the markedly dwindling undergraduate enrollment. So undergraduate student numbers were decreasing at UC Riverside and had fallen below 5,000. I think they actually fell to 4,600 students at one point. And to also bring more human biology research here on campus to a campus that was heavily steeped in agriculture through the experiment station. And thus, the mission and purpose was to primarily benefit UCR, not the community or necessarily the students in general. And there was a putative association with primary care. The University of California Medical Schools had gotten in trouble for not doing enough primary care. And so this program was supposed to bring more physicians into practicing in primary care, which it didn't do because their last 2 years were at the UCLA School of Medicine, and that's where they developed their career goals. So I would like to say there was a lot of good to the program. So there was good and there was bad. Okay, and so I'm just going to review that briefly because you'll hear more about it. So the program brought in 160 to 200 students per year. These students had the highest numbers, had the highest entering high school grades, SAT scores, numbers of advanced placement courses of any major on campus for 25 years here. The biomedical science students had the highest retention rate and 4-year graduation rates of any major on this campus. And this includes those students who were deselected. And I'm talking about 4-year graduation rates, not the standard 6-year graduation rates that people quote, which is the standard these days. The faculty were highly productive as measured by extramural grants and papers published. The 24 students per year who matriculated to the UCLA School of Medicine had higher Part 1 national board scores than the medical students admitted by UCLA School of Medicine, and also placed into comparable sought-after residency programs upon graduation. They were on paper indistinguishable from the UCLA non-Drew graduates, okay? The bad, which the Vine Society addressed. A year after Governor Brown approved the program and the budget, he was persuaded to cancel it by legislatures who thought that this new program was going to lead to a new UCR medical school, and they didn't want any more medical schools. They had just done Irvine, and they had all kinds of problems, and so they were not for it. So they canceled the program. And then the chancellor and a bunch of local legislatures lobbied heavily and got the program reinstated, but it has what I would call a much reduced austerity budget. So there was a funding which was never corrected for 30 years, I might add, this austerity budget. So there was supposed to be a building right here built when the program was started, but it never occurred. And so what they did is they used money to renovate Weber Hall, which the chemists had just moved out of because it was too old and decrepit. And so they renovated it for the biomedical sciences program. So I should point out the reduced budget proved a real impediment to student and faculty development efforts. UCR never addressed this issue. As such, the program was, in a sense, poorly conceived due to lack of funds, in my opinion. Not enough faculty, there weren't enough, 14 wasn't enough to do this. There wasn't enough student support. There was a poor research environment. There was no one working on human beings on this campus, much less eukaryotes or mammals. And so it was inadequate. Also, the biomedical sciences program had the lowest rate of faculty retention in all the University of California departments for various reasons. Many of the best faculty were hired away by other campuses and medical schools where they subsequently thrived. The biomedical sciences students graduating from the UCLA School of Medicine with an MD did not practice here in the Inland Empire because they had their clinical years at UCLA and they became like UCLA students. And this was a shortcoming that Thomas Haider was particularly concerned with as a community physician, and one to which he constantly pointed out as to why we needed our own four-year medical school. Now, in addition, we had very few minority students matriculated into the MD phase, particularly African Americans and Mexican Americans. Although we did have a high percentage of women and Asian Americans. The undergraduate students' academic and emotional support was nearly non-existent, as you'll hear from Dr. Nurwadi. Even though the biomedical sciences each faculty member advised 30 or 40 students per year, and we had a dedicated small staff, the pressure on the students and the feeling of alienation and abandonment was extreme. Now, I will say that while the overworked and under-supported biomedical sciences faculty bear some responsibility for these shortcomings and concern, the lion's share of responsibilities for these shortcomings rests on the administration, I believe, on this campus. And I think that, I might add that the leadership of UCR was in general quite poor during my 36 years. Now, not now. Now it's fabulous. However, it was quite poor. And this lack of administrative ability, it's crucial to have administrative people who are good and with vision. This lack of ability held the campus back, harmed students and faculty alike. There were a few outstanding leaders, and I'm not going to mention who was good and bad, but there were a few, and they did extremely important things. The administrative colleagues I had at UCLA, I was an associate dean there for many years, referred to UCR as the leaderless campus. Interesting. Now, the Vine Society stepped into this leadership vacuum, and they were advocates, but they really stepped into this vacuum. And they provided both the needed vision of what the state of California and the Inland Empire needed, and they brought the leadership ability to get it accomplished by going to the legislature and getting it done. So that's it.
Sounds fair. Thank you, Dr. Byus. Dr. Haider, if you wouldn't mind telling us a bit about how you and Mrs. Haider got involved in the biomed program in the mid-90s.
You want me to come up there or speak here?
No, they don't want you.
Okay.
If you're comfortable there, if that's okay.
No, this is fine. Thank you. As Dr. Byus mentioned, this is long overdue. I got involved with University of California in '97 when I made a major gift. And my own hope was to bring a four-year medical school here. I was a practicing physician, still am. And what I saw that There was a lack of medical care in Inland Empire, specifically tertiary care. We had none. We're still working on it. But I thought that the best way to do this is to have our own medical school. So when people have a heart attack or a bad stroke, it's hard to take them over to Orange County or UCLA, and we would have a lot of bad outcome that way because we didn't have the facility or the expertise here. Also, I felt there was a shortage of physician in Inland Empire, and the best way to really help the situation is to train our own physicians, because when people do their residency, some 70% or so stay in the locality where they do their residency. So that was my own, hope. They named the program. I really never asked for it, but the hope was to really improve medical care in the Inland Empire. I did not meet Dr. Levister until a little later, not too much after that. When we made the gift, we had a lot of media coverage, and that really brought everything to the surface. So everybody in the community knew what was going on, what the problem was. And I got to know a lot of people as patients who are key people. I got to know people on the Board of Regents. Sue Johnson was on the Board of Regents, and a number of other people that we knew. And I thought that this was a good place to start. And while going through this, I was approached by Dr. Levister. And he said, he told me about the Vine Society and what they have been doing. And their focus at the beginning was to really make the medical school and medical education more accessible to everybody. And the mission should be that the school student body represents what Inland Empire is made up of. So there was a lot of underserved population, students that did not really have the opportunity to become doctors through our school, through the biomedical program. And Dr. Byus actually gave a really good presentation on the background, what the strong points were and what were the weak points. And Dr. Levister told me that he has been working through the legislature and has made some real good progress. I was very happy to hear that. We joined forces. And we had presentation to the president of the University of California. Dr. Atkinson was the president back then. He didn't want to hear the word medical school. As Dr. Byus mentioned, they lost a lot of money at UC Irvine when they bought the county hospital. And they had a real hard time combining the two entities, the medical school and the newly acquired hospital, county hospital. They came for a meeting in Riverside, Board of Regents meeting, and I talked to the then Chancellor, Ray Orbach. I said, we need to talk to Atkins, and he says, I'm not touching it, you go there. But you are free to talk to him. It was a very sore topic. And so I talked to Sue Johnson, and she was on the Board of Regents. She was Atkinson's boss. She took me over, and he said, here, he has something to say. So I talked to him about the medical school and why we need this here, and he said, well, something to think about. Didn't say anything else. But I knew that that he was against it. Anyway, so that's kind of where it started on my end. And Dr. Levister's efforts started before that. I think it was 95 or 96. He will talk about it. And so the efforts continued. We got a lot of people involved in the community, the Monday morning group and Board of Supervisors. We almost incorporated the county hospital into UCR program. Dr. Drake came and looked at it, and we made a point that there are 200 paid physicians at the county hospital that's paid by the county. Why can't UCR take them over? And you continue to pay them, and UCR will have a hospital. We made a lot of progress there, and then it kind of went by the wayside when we got our, well, I wouldn't go there. But anyway, so there was some political stuff that went on. But we did make a lot of presentation to different community organizations and Redlands here, San Bernardino, and Dr. Levister was a partner in all of those. And he made very good points, good arguments, and really put some people in their places. He did. So, but the major work that Vine Society and Dr. Levister did was really putting a lot of pressure on the legislators to really hold them accountable and really make the argument that we needed this and we needed this to be representative of the student body and the population in Inland Empire. And a lot of programs came as a result of that, some of it before the UCR UCLA Medical School, the Medical Scholars Program, and some of the other efforts that took place. And Dr. Schiller will talk about that, I hope, because that made a big difference in students' ability to get into medical school and have a fair shot. And I just want to clarify one thing is the medical students that we admitted here from the underserved community, a lot of these people outperformed the UCLA students that were actually admitted into UCLA Medical School. And all they needed is a little help because they came from schools that didn't have AP classes, science classes. They didn't have a role model at home. And some of them actually was working 1 or 2 jobs and still attending UCR, hoping to become a doctor. But these people were very smart. They had their heart in the right place, good people. And I think we needed these people to be part of this medical school graduating class. And I served on the admission committee for a number of years, and I fought for every one of them. As an example, we had an underserved student, just an example that came up very recently. And he was working as a waiter on weekends in Orange County and attending the program here, the Biomedical program. So 22 hours every weekend as a waiter, you know, that takes you away from your schoolwork. And so obviously the grades were good, but not the very top. I always spend at least 1 hour or 2 hours with these kids that I interviewed. So I presented this case. And even though there was great opposition from UCLA people that sat on the admission committee, I pushed them through. And today, this student is actually an orthopedic surgeon working in San Bernardino. So I saw him not too long ago. I was so happy. I said, we made a difference. But Dr. Levister made a difference.
Thank
And
you
I
so
want to
much.
thank him for his efforts throughout the years.
And thank you so much for all of your support, Dr. Haider. So next question is for Dr. Nuwadi. What was it like for you as a student? Because you were part of this program back then. And can you discuss a little bit about your own experience and some of the experiences of your peers?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Great, good energy. So I had the unique position on being on both sides of the fence, both as a student at UC Riverside and also as a faculty member and leader later on in my career with the new medical school. So Dr. Byus was absolutely correct. The Dr. Thomas Haider Biomedical Sciences program really did entice the top of the top students to come to UC Riverside. And I can tell you, I grew up in Upland. I went to Upland High School. I committed to UC Riverside as a junior in high school, and I had, good grades, all that elevated GPA stuff with, honors and AP classes. So I had committed as a junior. I didn't actually go through any interviews for college. Because I knew I wanted to come to UC Riverside and do the Thomas Haider Biomedical Sciences program. And luckily that's exactly what I did. Now, when I got here, there wasn't a lot of support for African-American students, specifically in the sciences. And so a group of students got together and co-founded African Americans United in Science, AAUSN. I was the co-president. Dr. Sharice Davis, or now Dr. Sharice Davis, was the other co-president. Bridget Watkins, who's in the crowd, was one of the founding members. And so we had a group of students in the biomedical sciences, African-American students, but we didn't have a support network. We would have been the blind leading the blind. And so that's how we got connected with the Vines Medical Society. And I've been very fortunate. Now I'm a member of the society and the foundation. I've been a mentee my entire life, basically, of the Vines Medical Society. And Dr. Levister, Dr. Rogers, Dr. Gilbert Bush, and a little known fact is Dr. Levister actually bought me my first suit. This is not it, because I wouldn't be able to fit into the suit that he bought me. But he actually bought me my first suit. So it was amazing to have that support of a group of local African-American physicians and honestly leaders in the community that to help support us through. And I genuinely believe that myself and other students like myself would not have succeeded without their intervention, because there were many highly qualified African-American students before me who didn't get selected into the biomedical sciences. And that's also what Dr. Byus was talking about. It was a stressful program, like any elite competition. Every year, half of us were eliminated from the program, and you get a letter in the summer and say either congratulations, you're continuing on with the program, or sorry, look for another major, basically. And so, I was fortunate to make it through, but like I said, there were other highly qualified students who weren't selected, and I was a success story because of them. So because of the Blake Wilsons, because of the Quincy Allmans. Quincy Allman was actually my biomedical sciences peer advisor. And he was incredible, he still is incredibly intelligent. I have a very healthy ego, for those of you who know me. But I can humbly say that he was way more qualified to make it into the biomedical sciences program than I was. He was not selected. He went on to medical school at UCSF, pretty good medical school for those of you who are not aware. But it was, I think that was the catalyst, working with the Vines Medical Society, working with Dr. Levister and Dr. Rogers, pushing the legislature. And that's really what changed everything around. And so I would say that the first 2 years, though, were fantastic of medical school here at UC Riverside. I actually received lectures from Dr. Byus, Dr. Schiller, and those were some of the best lectures I received in my entire medical education. And when we went to UCLA, the Westwood campus students that have been in LA the whole time were like, oh, here come those UCR gunners, So it really was, it really helped elevate the bar of the students that came into UC Riverside. But I do think, there were casualties along the way of not making it through the biomedical sciences program. Many of them landed on their feet and did quite well, extraordinarily well. But all that happened to push to get to the four-year medical school. And I'll just end with, it's been an honor for me to come full circle. I was part of the founding leadership team here at UC Riverside School of Medicine, working with Dr. Emma Simmons, working with Dr. Kendrick Davis, and many others. And to see now the diversity that we're getting, you know, with all the medical students, that this is the vision that we started out with. And so I have to thank everyone on this panel and most of the people in this room for guiding me personally along through that journey and for allowing me to be a part of the end of that journey now, helping the next generation of medical students. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nawadi. Dr. Levister, as the past president of the J.W. Vines Medical Society, what was the spark that engaged the J.W. Vines Medical Society to get involved, and what did you do?
Thank you. Thank you. Chancellor Wilcox, Dean Dees, fellow colleagues of the J.W. Vines Medical Society, distinguished members of this panel and guests, thank you for coming here. But most of all, thank you for the relationship with the Vines Medical Society and for all the hard work that we band together to do. It was a privilege to work with you. Thank you. What follows is a story of painful discovery, hope, and healing. History can be ugly sometimes. The truth is that America's history is fraught with scars. My hope is that by examining our shared history, we move forward, understanding and sharing the truth. The sooner we deal with and accept the truth, the sooner we begin to heal. The Vines members became concerned about the biomedical program in 1995 when we were invited to a campus event hosted by the UCR's Black Students in Science. The event was held in part to honor Blake Wilson, who sits here today. He was a junior, whom many there believe would become the second Black student chosen for the medical school phase of the biomedical program in its then 28-year history. Growing concerns over the low minority selection rate were compounded when Wilson and several other highly qualified students, including Quincy Almond, a junior, and Phi Beta Kappa, failed to make the final cut. I doubt seriously that there were 24 Phi Beta Kappas that moved forward. Quincy became our poster child. The UCR biomedical program was unique in California. It was created, as you heard, in 1974 as a way to attract students to the then struggling UCR campus. The roughly 200 students in each class were systematically weeded out until 24 were selected at the end of the third year for the medical school phase. It was planned attrition. The rejection left a trail of fear and tears. The revelations created an atmosphere of indignation, humiliation, and unspeakable anger. This would go on to unite a firestorm that would eventually shake the core of one of America's foremost academic systems, the University of California. For months, Vines members huddled over how to best navigate the psychological and physiological preparations for battle. What evolved from reviewing years of data, countless interviews, and endless fruitless discussion was a damning picture of racial inequality and inequity perpetrated by many UCR administrators, allies, and others, including medical colleagues with whom we share the oath, do no harm. For months and years, we sought answers from the UCR administration. We were repeatedly rebuffed and ignored. Meanwhile, one by one, highly qualified Black and other members of the biomedical program were systematically weeded out. After years of constant broken promises, members of the Vines concluded that UCR's commitment to changing the program and boosting minority rates were an abject and cascading failure. In 2000, the Vines passed a resolution saying we would no longer recommend the program to minority students. We launched a statewide media campaign and mailed the resolution to lawmakers, other medical schools, high school advisors, teachers, and our major medical societies. And yes, Dr. Schiller and Dr. Byus, we sent the letter out to the Chancellor of UCLA and the Dean of the Medical School and said to them, we hope your silence on what's going on does not endorse that you agree with it. We got some interesting responses. Undaunted and unbowed, we finally took our concerns to Sacramento and lawmakers on the Assembly Budget Subcommittee for Higher Education and Finance. To many of you will know it as Sub 2. The chancellor is laughing. He's been there. In the spring of 2001, we met with lawmakers to share our concern, which were well received. At the May 2nd, 2022 hearing, following our testimony, the chair directed the formation of a committee to work out a solution. Dr. Levister and Dr. Rogers represented the Vines. President Michael Drake, currently Vice President of Health Policy, Mr. Larry Hirschman, Vice President for Budget, and UCR Interim Chancellor met by phones. President Drake was interesting, challenging, and actually called in from Mexico City Airport because of the gravity of the situation. May 22nd, 2002, legislators, based on the Vines testimony and the committee report, ordered UCR to make changes to the program or else lose funding the following year. In addition, future funding for the biomedical program was contingent on systemic changes with a 5-year reporting requirement. Under the revisions, students, regardless of major, could apply for the medical school space each year. Previously, students had to apply to the biomedical science program as freshmen, a condition that largely thwarted graduates of lower performing high schools and transfer students from community colleges. Legislatures also ordered UCR to eliminate the requirement that students finish their undergraduate degree in 3 years. After more than 7 years and help from politicians, local churches, the business community, organizations, healthcare, leaders, and members of the greater inland community, the Vines finally succeeded in forcing change to the UC Riverside Biomed program. This legislature action was unusual because the University of California does not answer to lawmakers on the specifics of academic programs. The academic senate controls that. But the legislatures can will power through the line item in the budget. And we found that out. The committee became increasingly frustrated. Joseph Samidian, then chairman of the Subcommittee on Education Finance, wrote, and I quote, "I tried hard to respect the UC system's autonomy, but at some point, you have to ask some hard questions and get to the truth." The program now has a new mission statement based on legislature guidelines. Broader range of undergraduate students, including educationally disadvantaged students. Pursuing medical careers of service in medically underserved communities. Meet the state's need for physician and health practitioners in the Inland Empire. The work of a few reminds us a river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. The end result is a better, stronger, more accessible UCR School of Medicine. In years since we began our fight for justice, several biomed students have gone on to become doctors in spite of the flawed program, to include Dr. Sharice Davis, OB gynecologist specialist in Northern California, and others with fertile minds forced into the darkness of rejection. Do you really know what it's like to be good and be rejected? Think about it. In 2003, Quincy, now a hospitalist practicing in Orange County, in his last year at UC San Francisco Medical School said, and I quote, "When you look at the numbers, it's hard to fathom and believe that there was only one qualified Black student in the program's then 28-year history. What I witnessed firsthand shook me to the core." And Quincy was one of my mentees. And I cried for and with him. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends slowly toward justice. Like many of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous quotation, these words echo through the ages. They offer hope and give rise to a sense that progress towards freedom, equality, and indeed justice is inevitable. I wish to thank you, our guests, for coming out and sharing our journey into the light. Thank you, Chancellor Wilcox, for doing this. Thank you. Thank you, Dean Dees, for doing this. on my behalf and the behalf of the Vines, my colleagues. Thank you. I also want to thank my Barnes College of Engineering colleagues. As you know, I wear another hat as a chemical engineer. The Dean, Chris Lynch. I also want to thank my son, Clay, who's in the audience. Thank you, Clay. Thank you. And last but not least, I want to thank my wife and partner of 45 years, Chris, an attorney, an Emmy award-winning journalist. Chris was instrumental in helping the Vines craft its legal arguments and global media outreach. Also, I have to say, she tolerated and went through my rants, my raves, my tears, and broken dates. Thank her. It's my pleasure to look around and say that the Vines is now in good hands. Dr. Rogers, Dr. Harris, and Dr. Nadwadi. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Levister. My goodness. Dr. Byus,
I'm sorry.
if you wouldn't mind describing the efforts to reconfigure and rebuild the
Certainly.
program.
It was I'd like to just sort of summarize what happened right after this occurred, particularly around the legislative events and what happened shortly thereafter and after a fair amount of years thereafter. So it was early spring in 2003. I was in my laboratory working as a scientist. I just received another NIH grant. I'd done some significant new discoveries. And when I had a phone call informing me from one of the administrators on campus that the biomedical sciences program had been canceled. And I said, what? And they go, no, there's no more budget in 3 months. It's all gone. And I went, oh, really? And so in something called control language, the budget for the biomedical sciences program had been voted by the legislature to be eliminated in 3 months. In other words, it wasn't that we did something and then they voted. It was already canceled. And it had to be voted upon to be reinstated. And so unless a series of changes were made to the program. And so a letter from Michael Drake followed quickly thereafter, followed by one from Hirschman, the chief budget officer, and then formal recognition by the legislature. We later discovered that all of these changes were directly dictated by the members of the Vine Society. So it's unheard of that this occurs. It's nearly impossible for the legislature even the legislature to dictate to the university on academic matters because the budget, at least historically, has not been individually accessible. The legislature approves the entire budget, not individual parts. Well, what had happened in the biomedical sciences budget, that budget had never been rolled over into the whole UC, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know anything about budgets, but had not been rolled over into the whole UC budget, so it was accessible by the legislature. And so these efforts by the Vine Society also, I might add, at the time, created a real degree of personal animosity towards Dr. Levister and Dr. Rogers. They were not very popular people on this campus. And I might add, many people on this campus and system-wide wanted to see the program canceled. And I might add that the Vine Society did not want to see the program canceled. They wanted to see it improved and changed, but not canceled. If it was canceled, it wasn't going to do anybody any good. They wanted to see it improved and changed. And what they were asking us to do was really not that bad. It was very good. Now, however, because the individuals who should have taken, now we have to change the program, should have taken the responsibility and ownership of formulating these changes were somewhat clueless on how to go forward. And the reason we were in this situation to begin with, for not listening to the people in the state of California, including the Vine Society, I got the job of complying with legislative mandates and ultimately became the new dean of the Biomedical Sciences program. But during the subsequent 3 months, we had to come up with mechanisms to address each of the concerns enumerated, and then have the revised program approved by the Biomedical Sciences faculty and the Academic Senate at UCR and the UCLA School of Medicine and the UC system-wide administration in 3 months. And so I thought, since it was my job to do this now, I thought it might be nice to talk to Dr. Levister and Dr. Rogers because, you know, they got this done. However, I asked 3 times over this period of this summer if I could meet with them and talk to them and, you know, hear what they had to say, and instead of just reading this document. And I was repeatedly told in very strong terms, no, I was not allowed to talk to them. So literally 1 week before the legislative deadline occurred, or the budget was to be canceled, and I had gotten everything through all the committees and gotten it all done, I attended a meeting where I met for the first time Dr. Levister and Dr. Rogers, and discovered that they were not the devils incarnate that I had been led to believe. In fact, they were intelligent, hardworking, and quite reasonable people. So in response, so that's how it happened, and that's how we revised the program. And we basically made all the changes that the Vine Society asked for. Now, changed the pyramid structure, and as Dr. Levister said. However, we had a lot of pieces around advising and student support that were extremely important. And we had to really address mechanisms to do this. And however, when I turned to the campus and asked for help, they were of no help at all. The campus formally sort of turned its back on us at this point, leaving us with this big job. So given the dearth of institutional support, I formed a committee combined of members of the community who are concerned about helping students at UCR. And Dr. Sosa is here as one of the people I turned to, as well as Dr. Rogers and Dr. Levister. And we met throughout the summertime on trying to come up with ways to increase minorities in the program, increase student success, help the disadvantaged students. What could we do? What was possible? And we researched, I was a scientist, everyone. So that's what I did research. I read journal articles, and we went and talked about all the different programs across the country that were doing this, and ultimately decided as a group of people, of community members from outside the university, these were not university people, they were all from the outside, on how to proceed. And so Dr. Schiller will tell you what we did, but essentially we embarked upon a whole series of approaches to achieve the legislative ends with minimal to no support from our own campus. But I might add, extreme support from the UCR faculty, the biomedical sciences faculty. They thought this was a good idea. They were only more than happy and willing to participate in this. And I might add, the UCLA School of Medicine was also very supportive and provided enormous aid and help in this process, as did the Drew program. Colleagues at the Drew program were extremely helpful. I have nothing but tremendous gratitude to them for everything that they've done for us. And so I might add that, you know, the Vine Society had this vision of what needed to be done, and they supplied the leadership to get it done. So on this campus, there was no vision and there was no leadership. And this all came from outside the university. Extremely unusual occurrence in the entire, at least as far as I know, in all of the UC culture. And it's because of this that we have the medical school today. Now, I know Dr. Haider, and there were a lot of efforts, some efforts to start the medical school, but I firmly believe that we would not be sitting here today, maybe if ever, if the Vine Society had stepped in and do this and changed the mission. As the one thing we did is immediately change the mission of the Biomedical Sciences program to train physicians to serve the underserved in inland and rural California. This now became our mission. This is what we use to make decisions on going forward. And as Dr. Dees, I know, has spoken, the mission is the key to getting things done. And it all came from the Vine Society initially. Now, I might add, the other community members, including Dr. Soso, who is here, stepped in and were extremely helpful to all of these efforts going forward. So if Dr. Schiller could tell you what we did with no money from the campus, that would be good. Thank you.
Dr. Schiller.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here right now and talk about what's happened because unwittingly, what occurred actually changed my life dramatically. So I was the interim dean of the graduate division for 3 years, 2003. And this is better? Okay. In 2003, I was asked to return to my first love, which was teaching, which means I was let go of my deanship. And I came back to the biomed program, and Craig asked if I would help out. And so he made me associate dean, working with him, and chair of the biomedical science program, and laid out the tasks in front of us. And the task that I was assigned was actually to see if in some way we could help support the students who are already at UCR attain their dreams of becoming physicians. Now, to do that, I realized we'd be working with students often who came in from underperforming high schools, from socioeconomically or educationally disadvantaged backgrounds, first to college. And so, as Dean Byus said, we looked everywhere for what programs we could use to emulate that were successful. And the one we chose was the Biology Scholars Program at Berkeley. Now, I was asked to sort of lead that effort, and I had help from the community, but still I didn't know what I was doing, okay? I taught medical students, I'd done research. What did I know about teaching freshman science majors to become a successful student? I'd never worked with freshmen before. So to make it really worthwhile, I chose 15 freshmen in 2004, all from local underperforming high schools with low SATs and low grades, and says, I can make these kids better. And I started with a program, and Teresa Kofi will come up in a moment to talk to you about this. I asked help from Teresa. Teresa was working with the Academic Resource Center at the time, and Catherine Jones, who was director of the Honors Program, and I said, help. And so we came up with a model that we thought would be useful, and we set goals. These students are going to have to hit 3.0 after their first year, or else they won't be part of the program. That didn't work. I think a third or maybe 25% hit that 3.0 goal. And so I said, well, I can't just let them go after one quarter. Let's do something more. And believe me, we were working very hard with these students. I had a variety of different programs working with them. Second quarter, a little bit better, but still wasn't where we wanted it to be. And so I decided to go up to Berkeley. Dean Byus came with me, Teresa Cofield came with me, and met with John Matsui, who'd been my mentor by phone all through this. And he sat me down in front of their students, the biology scholars program students, and they said, Dr. Schiller, listen to the students talk to you. And I said, well, okay, tell me what I'm doing wrong. You know, I'm trying to encourage these students to be successful. I was giving these students money to be successful, trying to take them out of working the low-paying jobs and spend some time studying, but it wasn't working. And what I learned at that moment from the students was, you mean you were going to let those students leave the program if they didn't meet your standard? And I said, yeah, I thought that was kind of the incentive. And he says, and you think you have a community that you're working with, like a family? And I said, yeah. It said, and so you kick your family members out when they're not successful? I said, no, I don't do that. And then it just dawned on me, what am I doing? We went back to our 15 students and said, you will never fail in our program. We will work with you forever. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about the program. Could I have the first slide somehow? So the program started with 15 students, but after a few years, well, we got funding. So Howard Hughes gave us a large grant, and I hired Teresa, which is the smartest thing I'd ever done. Because Teresa really got it. And I was getting it, I was learning. And so after a few years, this is what the MSP program looked like. We had about 200 undergraduate students, and we used a multi-cohort model. That is, we start as freshmen. If you come in as freshmen or sophomores or juniors, you stay with us until you graduate. All right? We used horizontal and vertical mentoring. That is, I used peers to mentor, and I used slightly older MSP students to mentor. Now, initially, we used honors program to do coaching, academic coaching. That wasn't working the way we wanted it to work. So we took our own MSP students as they got to be juniors and said, you become the academic coach for students who are freshmen and sophomores, because you know what it takes to be successful. Leadership development, we used internships. One of the things we learned early on, I told Dr. Levister this, was that giving the students money to study instead of work did not work. And Teresa came up with the realization of why it's not working. She came up with the idea of, let's give them a job to do. They became part of the MSP leadership team. And with that funding and responsibility, not only did they learn how to become a leader, but they became much more serious about their work. And so those internships really meant a lot to the students. And our success started to grow. We also talk about healthcare disparities, et cetera. So this is 1 year showing the graduation ceremony. The most important thing in our program was graduation. And about 87% of the students who came in graduated with a BS degree from our program. If we go to the next slide, I want Teresa to show you what's happening now.
Well, good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today. And thank you, especially to the Vine Society. I didn't know that all the work that you were doing through the 90s that often didn't make sense to me because I was in college, then I was working here full time. I was getting my footing. I used to produce sudden data reports, right? Especially as it got closer to 99, 2000, 2001, helped start concepts for what became the Fast Start program. Part of the reason I took the job and why I stayed full-time with the Medical Scholars Program is that after about a year of learning, we introduced a concept that had not been seen on this campus, and I did study on this campus, right? So the science library means a lot to me, and that Dr. Orbach's name is on it, because we didn't have those resources when I was a student. There was a lot we didn't have. But we built a community. The students at Berkeley were listened to. So the rules for getting into the community were you came to UC Riverside with a mission to uplift the community. And if in that path you decide not to be a doctor, but you still have your values to uplift the health of the community, you get to stay in the community. So the graduation photo means a lot to me because I see future professionals. The student getting the teaching credential, the student getting a medical degree, the student working as a social worker are all uplifting the health of this community that I live in. I used to shop in San Bernardino with pride in the 80s. I have to tell students now a different story about how we have to invest and uplift the community because it really matters. And as far as all of this wonderful work and advocacy and results, I've been working with our evaluation analyst who joined our team a few months ago. And there are over 900 students, right, in this program, plus a few hundred more that are still enrolled, right? So we've helped over 1,000 students. Just want to let you know a little bit of information about what happened to them, because this was hard work. We had to figure it out and where we were going to go to make sure folks became doctors, but also that folks were living the mission, right? Which was the health of this community. So from the students we were able to keep in contact with, we had 154 students from that 2004 to 2019 cohorts who reported being admitted to medical school. Some of those alumni are chairs of admissions, and I know that Dr. Sosa and Mr. Randy had mentored them. Chairs of admissions here at the UCR School of Medicine. So it's been a long time. We're coming up on 20 years of launching MSP, but we have made really, I think, this community-driven effort for change. And there's another 132 students that we were also able to keep in touch with that pursued a variety of degrees. Some of them did do teaching, but many of them went into health careers. Some of them actually went into research. I see an MD, PhD in the room joining us today who's still in residency training because that is a journey. And we were able to get a lot done, but it was really this system of treating individuals like family. And I'll just add a little bit more. Those student employment positions that we offered, which we marketed as student leadership, the students in the room that remember, yeah, I know you're now working professionals, we called it the closer job. And their job was to keep the space open after 5 p.m. I did come from main campus to an academic department. I was quite nervous at that time. And one of the things that I had struggled with was that in those years, our academic resource center was open 8 to 5. But I had been a student here. You're a student at night, you're a student on the weekend. Okay, so they had responsibilities for maintaining space, keeping it tidy, keeping a good system, but also they were really running a lot of leadership and peer mentorship by taking care of one another. And it's been my honor and continues to be my honor. I plan on retiring here, probably 10 to 15 years still. And to make sure that we continue to grow more physicians, leaders, scientists, teachers, educators, and so forth.
So the MSP program was very successful, but that's one program. And when we think of a pathway to medical school, we think that this is something that should go beyond, upstream, if you will, of college. And so we had to start thinking of programs that would also address the students were coming from underperforming high schools, or again, from educationally or economically disadvantaged backgrounds, underserved areas. And so we started thinking about more programs that would help these students. And another thing we learned also from Dean Oles, who was the first dean of the medical school, was that the pathway should continue through medical school into residency programs, because that's another way to increase the number of physicians in our community. So I don't have a lot of time to explain all this on this next slide, but this is the pathway that has been developed with the help of Howard Hughes, California Endowment, Kaiser, Permanente, California Wellness, Riverside Community Health Foundation, and many other organizations, as well as Dean Dees, who has provided some funding for support of these efforts. And so we have programs that start in the K through 8 program, a small program there. Then high school students are affected by the Physician Leader Program and the Health Science Partnership, which is an outreach to high school students. Medical Leaders of Tomorrow was a one-week camp for sophomores, rising sophomores in high school. Then we get into the community college. We have a Bridges to the Baccalaureate program, NIH-funded program. We have also a new program that Teresa will tell you about with the community colleges, because that's a very rich population of students we needed to address. And then we get into the undergraduate programs. Besides Medical Scholars Program, we have Jumpstart, which replaced Fast Start, unfortunately, during the COVID era when we couldn't do a 5-week residential program. We went to a Zoom program, which we call Jumpstart. And then into the post-bac program. So that was another thing that we looked at, said some of these students that needed extra help need a little bit more than their baccalaureate. They need another year of support before they get into medical school. So we created a post-baccalaureate program. And then you get into medical school, complete medical school, and then into the residency programs. Now, there are also social programs and clinical programs and opportunities beyond just the academic classwork. And that we thought was also extremely important for the success of these students. So we now have a very extensive pathway of student. This works with several thousand students a year in these programs. And there's a very exciting new program that has just opened. I'll let Teresa talk about.
Well, I'll just briefly mention, because I think we're ready to transition to some audience questions. We'll just show the next slide. But we do have a statewide initiative here in California called California Medicine Scholars Program. This program is for a real pathway from community college to medicine. As part of the charge with the Vine Society, we had a history of working with transfer students, but those students had already transferred to UCR. This program is new. We're in our second year. We have 100 students from the local colleges here in Region 9. And we have some materials if you want to pick some up today about that. But this, I think our history poised us to be selected as one of the first 4 locations for this new community college pathway.
Excellent. I want to, excellent. I want to end with Dr. Rogers. If you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about what do you think some of the benefits of both the Vine Society as well as the Refigured program made.
So my name is AJ Rogers, and I've been a member of the Vine Society for a long time. And I've got to crystallize some things because we've heard a lot of talk about how the program was or wasn't. My undergraduate degree is in physics. My medical degree is from Harvard. I'm more quantitative than emotional about these things. So my threshold for action is really numerical and not emotional. When we looked at the Biomedical Sciences program in 1995, and we were able to gather the data from 1980 to the year 2000, we found that only one African American had completed that program. When we looked at the faculty of the Biomedical Sciences program during the same time period, there were no African Americans teaching in the program. When we looked at the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences, where all the life science disciplines are, biology, chemistry, et cetera, there was one. So it was fairly clear to me that there was some issue at the University of California at Riverside. I wasn't quite sure exactly what it was. But our first attempt were to try to approach the campus administration, the deans of the biomed program, the deans of the colleges, the chancellor itself. And I was struck by what Dr. Byus said. It was difficult for the faculty members to talk about a medical school or the biomedical sciences program. So when it came to people who were outsiders, well, they had no appetite for that at all, at all. It was remarkable. I had been to elite medical educational systems before. UC Riverside is decidedly different. And so when we saw that, my first instinct was to, well, try to join the system, work within the system, affect a change. That's what they teach you to do. So I applied for a clinical position as a clinical associate professor in the program. My application was rejected 2 times. I don't know why. There was something deficient about me. So failing that, then we really had no other solution within the campus of the UC Riverside program, so we had to do something else. Going to other colleges gives you the opportunity to meet people. I met Dr. Drake when I was an undergrad at Stanford. I was a freshman or sophomore, actually. I met his soon-to-be wife at that time as well. When we made those legislative presentations in Sacramento, Dr. Drake was there. And once again, we didn't really beat around the bushes. We gathered all our data and made some crisp, clear, lucid, cogent arguments about why this program was not good. And the salient features are that they would accept 200 to 250 students for 25 slots at UCLA. This necessarily meant that 90% or so would have to fail the program. From the student standpoint, it created a lot of academic trauma. From the university standpoint, they had high-quality students populating other departments on campus. I thought this was diabolical. They liked it. So we made a couple of presentations. The first one, they really didn't believe what they were hearing from us, because how could this go on in modern day universities? And so the university itself, the subcommittee itself, the legislature did its own review and asked us to come back a year later. And so, yes, it's exactly the way it was. And so that's when they mandated that some changes be made. But there was really no other alternative. There was no working within the system at that time to alter a change. This is a state school supported by tax dollars. Everybody should be able to participate. And so I was asked to talk about the benefits of what happened with the legislature and the benefits of having a medical school here in Riverside, and there are several. First of all, it's not intuitively obvious how you go from being a biomedical sciences 7-year program to a full medical school, since really they did not such a great job with the biomedical sciences program, right? So who would trust them with a medical school? That's an interesting question. But that did happen. There is now a medical school here, and the promise and the potential of having a medical school here in Riverside are many. And they are as follows. There are the clinical benefits. Having a medical school whose mission is to serve the underserved solves several problems. One of them is that it directly diversifies the healthcare workforce community in this area and can directly address healthcare disparities. I don't know if a lot of you know the data, but African Americans have the highest mortality rates for HIV/AIDS, cardiovascular disease, strokes than any other ethnic group in the nation. So someone has to address who can do that. Sorry. There's also the benefit of all the doctors who graduate don't go into clinical medicine. Some go into public health and public health policy positions. Public health policy is extremely important because they address the populace needs in terms of healthcare. You know, what diseases are prevalent? How do you address those diseases? They direct resources, funding dollars for research to those areas. That's also a benefit of having a medical school here in Riverside. There's a lot of students who go into medical administration and who become deans and professors, demonstrating that those students can work from within the system once again to try to keep these abnormalities from forming in the first place. I mean, that was really the problem as I saw it with the University of California in Riverside. Should have never had a life science college with one African-American professor. I mean, it's a state school. This shouldn't happen. And finally, having a medical school here in Riverside where innovation and research occurs, it often leads to new knowledge, new treatment modalities, new industry, and sometimes more jobs. Politicians like that because it expands the tax base. It's all quantitative. And so, yes, the Vines had a hand in changing the biomed system. We were at a point where we could have just torpedoed the whole thing because, you know, this was not working out well for a long time, but we knew that having a medical school here was in everyone's best interest. You know, a lot of good things have happened. I mean, there's so many more students now who have MD degrees, who are in their residencies, who are really on an upward trajectory to do good things in the healthcare arena, not just in clinical medicine, but in health science research, public health policy, and the like. So that is the promise and the potential of having a UC Riverside School of Medicine. All those good things can happen and will happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been a beyond powerful story today, and I'm grateful to hear it in this way with all these amazing leaders. I have a 30-second question, so we'll see how it goes. But in 30 seconds, we're just going to quickly go down the line. What are your hopes for UCR School of Medicine going forward in 30 seconds?
Well, I'm pleased to see the new building and all the achievements the new dean has accomplished. It's just been very heartfelt and wonderful for me to see this. I hope the trajectory just continues. I think I would caution everyone, though, that you must continue to support the efforts of the dean and this medical school. Keep it up. Expand your community influence, because potentially cloudy, storm-filled days are coming. And God only knows what that will bring to an institution like this, which has these goals. So that's 30 seconds.
That's a great question. So my job is to build and oversee residency programs. So during orientation, I tell all of the residents and fellows, we have fellowship programs as well, I say, you're extremely important people, but you are the second most important people to all of us here. The first most important people are the patients. That's why all of you are here. So if there's something that I would like to see from this medical school, it's that we seed this region with great young physicians and we improve the health of the population of this community.
So my hope, my prayer is that some of those doctors who graduate from Dr. T's school do research. You know, when I was an intern, excuse me, I was an intern at Cedars-Sinai. I heard a lot of discussion and talks about Tay-Sachs disease and cystic fibrosis and all kinds of diseases that were referable to a specific demographic. But no one ever talked about G6PD deficiency or sickle cell anemia because they just weren't interested. Well, with a more diversified school, that will happen. I am absolutely sure, I'm hoping and praying that that does happen. And other things like that, someone has to address why we have so much hypertension that causes all the complications that we know about, why there's so much, why there's such high maternal mortality and things like that. Someone's got to address that. And someone has to have a vested interest in addressing those things.
My comment is a charge for the community. Keep your eyes on the mission statement to ensure there's no mission shift. Do not lose sight of that. And if you do that with your current mission statement, you will be able to solve the problems of health delivery to the underserved, consistent with the needs of the state of California. My last quick statement is, yes, I was considered persona non grata on UCR's campus. But quite frankly, that was the biggest compliment I've had since birth. Thank you.
You know, my hope is that we develop our medical enterprise to improve the quality of healthcare for this community. We all heard some of the great steps that have been taken, and a lot of it by Vine Society to include in the student body, people from this community, people from the underserved community, and not only that, but help them get through and become physicians or other healthcare providers. And I think at this time, if we develop our medical enterprise so we have quality physicians, quality medical care in this community so people don't have to travel to LA or other locations for their tertiary care. And I think we are on our way to do that. And I want to thank the Chancellor and Dean Dees that have been working on this very hard to bring qualified physicians and develop the different departments so UCR could be the leader in healthcare in this community.
I would certainly echo Dr. Haider's comments. I'm sort of hoping and dreaming for the UCR Medical Center, a large teaching hospital where our clinicians our medical students and our residents would have a better chance of continuing their experience in the Inland Empire, making it even easier for them to stay on afterwards.
I work directly with the students. So my hope for the future is that as they continue their journeys that require that lifelong education, that they themselves are the teachers, that they work here. We need to bring more people home, right?
All very well said. And from persona non grata to this recognition event, the ARC does lean towards justice. So significant gratitude for all of the work that this panel has done for our institution. So thank you all. It's remarkable. to Dean Dees.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martinez, for moderating this panel. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you on the panel for sharing this historical perspective and for your contributions to UCR School of Medicine, the foundation, and helping to shape the mission of the medical school. Thank you. At this time, I would like to announce, one second. At this time, I would like to again thank all of you for being here this afternoon to learn more about the impact that the J.W. Vines Medical Society has had on our School of Medicine. You've heard that they made an indelible impact on the School of Medicine. You heard a lot of talk about the mission. And our mission is to train a diverse physician and biomedical science workforce and to develop programs in research and clinical care to serve the people of the Inland Empire. Each and every day, we seek to honor and deliver on our mission. And increasingly, we have achieved national recognition for our accomplishments. UCR School of Medicine is ranked number 5 in the nation as the most diverse medical school by US News and World Report. We receive over 6,000 applicants each year for 86 slots in the entering medical school class. We are also witnessing the local impact as well. 60% of our students have ties to the Inland Empire. 40% of our students and residents are staying in the region to train or practice, helping to address the shortage of physicians in this area. And thank you. And this year, in our graduating class, almost 20% of our students are African Americans. About 40% of our students are Hispanic. And as I stated, many of the students, upwards of 40 to 50 who are graduating, will have ties to the Inland Empire. We have developed residency and fellowship programs. Our students do not all have to leave the area to train, and about 25% of our students will remain in the Inland Empire for their residency training. Of all of our residency and fellowship training programs, all 9 of the programs are fully accredited with commendation. As our event comes to a close, I would like to invite Dr. Lita Harris, the current president of the J.W. Vines Medical Society, to join me. Oh, you didn't know?
No.
Okay. It's always good to have a nice surprise.
Right.
I'd like to announce that in honor of the J.W. Vines Medical Society, we are renaming our annual Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Colloquium. It will henceforth be known as the UCR School of Medicine's J.W. Vines Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Colloquium. This important recognition will ensure that the story and legacy of these important contributions are a part of our history and are woven into our ongoing work far into the future. The inaugural UCR School of Medicine J.W. Vines Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Colloquium will be held on Wednesday, May 22nd, and our speaker will be Dr. David Acosta, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer of the Association of American Medical Colleges, WAMC, and we invite all of you to join us for this event. And I present to the J.W. Vines Medical Society. The UCR School of Medicine proudly acknowledges the J.W. Vines Medical Society for its pivotal role in shaping the landscape of medical education and practice. Your pioneering spirit and unwavering commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion have left an indelible mark on our institution and the broader medical community. It's with profound gratitude and admiration that we designate our annual DEI colloquium as the UCR School of Medicine's J.W. Vines Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Colloquium. This concludes our program, and we still have refreshments. So thanks again for coming. Please enjoy the refreshments and feel free to speak to the panelists.